Hello and welcome to this quarter's Crafted briefing. Really pleased that so many of you can join us for what is our look not just at what's happening but certainly looking forward. Before we begin, the usual bits of information. We are recording this piece, so therefore we will be providing the recording afterwards. If you need to step out, fire alarm or lunch, that's absolutely fine. You'll get the copy of this afterwards. If what I'm talking about raises any questions and you want to discuss it more, put your questions in the Q&A box and the account teams will be able to follow up after this with you about whatever the topic is. The topic of this Crafted briefing, AI and the future of marketing. With the best of in the world, we have around half an hour and we probably won't cover all of it. But what I hope to be able to achieve is to give you some talking points and some thinking, and also a little bit of space to think about what the AI trends that are happening and what they mean for all of us moving forward. Talking about predictions, never make predictions, especially about the future. I love this quote from Casey. I have used it before for the eagle-eyed amongst you. But the point about it is that, yes, not all predictions will come true, but what it does do is give all of us that ability to say, okay, if we had to really think about all of these different things, all of the noise that we have at the moment, can we distill it down to a few things? So for me, predictions are about that ability to take stock, sit down, think about what is, and certainly in the AI space, an incredibly noisy topic in our lives, and thinking what next, and particularly in the marketing sphere. So my first prediction will start negatively and improve later. The news will get worse before it gets better. And the point that I want to make here is AI has been part of the zeitgeist for the last 2 or 3 years. It is no stranger to people saying that it is overhyped, that it's horrible. This was from Goldman Sachs last year saying it's wildly expensive, it's unreliable. Don't bet your business on it. The point is that any new technology will always have an element of detractors. What really has happened at the moment is that as many businesses and organisations have invested quite dramatically in AI, there's actually going to be more of these negative headlines. To give you an example, MIT report recently in August was that 95% of all generative AI pilots in organisations fail. So millions, billions, trillions of dollars being spent trying to ready a business or an organisation for the future, spending that on AI projects, a 95% failure rate. They are the bets that CEOs and boards are having to make or being pressured to make by the markets and shareholders. They aren't always paying off. However, look a little bit deeper. What are the reasons why these are perhaps failing? The first one is actually, are we asking generative AI to do something it can't actually do? So it might be something that's really valuable for the business, but it's not necessarily something that's in the comfort zone or the wheelhouse of actually what generative AI is good at. The second reason is also skill gap. Do the organisations, and if you're an organisation of 10, 15, 30,000 people, you've got to do an awful lot of hearts and minds and bringing people along to understand what AI can deliver for your organisation, or else, as it says, it will end up failing. One thing though that I'm sure all of us have experienced is AI work slop. These are things, and when AI is being used within an organisation, generating reports, writing emails, and actually what is nearly there takes longer to undo, make right, to double check the accuracy of than doing it right in the first place. Particularly prevalent, more junior members of staff that may not have domain knowledge or industry knowledge, producing reports that are easier to be produced on things like generative AI. And what that does is somebody somewhere has to look at it. Maybe it's a dead end that you go down. Maybe somebody has to go and fact check things. Actually, the ease of use of some of these is a negative, and you have a business review here. There's been many studies that actually overuse of AI is a net negative, not just whether the project fails from an investment point of view, but from a productivity point of view, it's actually a net negative. It pulls people back. This applies in all areas, whether it's coding, whether it's in accounting. So there's been increasing people going, actually, what are we using it for? Are we trusting it too much? Second of all, is just the economic impact of AI is increasingly getting people's heads turning. So this graph is a incredibly dramatic graph, because what this shows is that in the US, the total spending on data centers, the computers and the infrastructure that's powering this AI boom, has now taken over all retail in construction. More money is being spent in data centers than the entirety of retail in the US, and is approaching all other office and all other elements of commercial property. So that money is being very, very concentrated in this thing, in this bet for the future that it will come off. The fact that AI fortunes change, we will talk and have with clients about how AI and people like ChatGPT, their sources that they cite are increasingly things like user-generated content, Reddit being one of them. Only just recently, there was reports out that ChatGPT slashed the amount of references it was making to Reddit, and so therefore the traffic it was being delivered from ChatGPT to Reddit wiped about $5 billion off Reddit's market capital relatively immediately. So things will move quickly, and what is the AI is positive, it will come away, and these are the headlines that are going to become noisier. In a macro sense, in almost a societal and actually world impact, if you look at the amount of money that is being spent on AI investment with those data centers, with NVIDIA and new GPUs to power them, with the teams and the models that are required, if you took that out of US GDP would be flat. Almost the entirety of GDP growth in the US is driven solely by this tech spending. Deutsche Bank have highlighted that if, perhaps when, the AI bubble bursts, it is not going to be pretty that an economy the size of America is relatively being propped up by this tech spending. Equally, recently in the UK, we've announced various inward investments for some of these AI tech companies into the UK. In the next year, I strongly forecast that we're going to hear more of the bad side of this. What if it all goes wrong? And there's going to be a bit of a cacophony around it. That's a sort of a country, a societal level, but it affects the really small business. So this is an example of a small town restaurant in America that had to put out a post because their own AI overview about their restaurant had inaccuracies of what products they stocked and were on the menu. On this, there was an example where AI Overview said that they sold a large pizza for the price of a small, and people were coming in and sort of showing their phones. Well, Google says it, you must do it. So AI is getting bad press, and it will get more. However, I fundamentally don't think that either the most positive or the worst press about AI is true. It is absolutely a transformation that will happen over a period of time in society, in marketing, in our personal lives as well as professional. But what you will hear is more of those extremes, that polarizing opinion. It was the best thing ever and we must spend trillions on it, will also be, what if it all goes wrong and it could be the end of times. Just expect that, because we're going through that process at the moment. But the comfort here is, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Jean-Baptiste Alphonse said this in French. I'm not going to attempt that. Equally, that was in 1849, popularised by Bon Jovi in about 15 years ago. But in this environment where it's getting noisy, is it good? Is it bad? Should we be looking at it? Should we not? Actually take that step back. And this is where, as I said, my predictions, really want to allow us to do that. One of my favourite quotes, Jeff Bezos, is about how he always gets asked what's changing and never what will hold true, what will be those truths that will persist all the way through. And to give you this in Amazon terms, what will always be true is people will want a greater range of products that are for a lower price, that are delivered faster. Those are their truths. So everything that Amazon does, to a greater or lesser degree, is about, can they increase the range, can they drive down pricing, and can they deliver it faster? So in all of our businesses, whether we're talking about AI or any new technology or new change, what are those things that really believe that aren't going to change and that we can hold on to? To give you an example of this, OpenAI, the sort of company behind ChatGPT, they have over the last year been actually spending an awful lot of money about they're increasingly doing more advertising, they're doing things to gain their profile rather than just only letting the product do the talking. They recently launched their first ever large TV ad campaign. And the lovely thing here is that these are the digital future, and should we trust this digital future? It was shot on 35mm film, the same as Gone with the Wind, because the human element, the reality and that emotional connection is still there, even if we're talking about this tech that promises great things in the future. And when you're thinking about your users and what they want, a framework that this is called desire paths. So this is, as you can see here, this might be when a council does an absolutely lovely meandering path, but people just want to get somewhere, so they'll cross the grass and they'll run in a path that is where they want to go. What, as a business, as an organisation, are you thinking is better for you? You want them to go and fill out this form that's got 16 things in it, but they just want to get to just click inquire. What are they actually trying to do as a user? To give you an example, in 1914, Ohio State University, actually, when they first built their quadrant, they didn't put any paths in. And over the winter, people were making tracks through the snow about where they wanted to go between different buildings. Somebody went up in a hot air balloon and just mapped out those paths and said, right, we need to put that path. So that's what they put in, because they listened to their users first, rather than going, this will just look nice. And when you're thinking about your users, you've got to think about what do they actually do on ChatGPT. So just recently, ChatGPT actually, for the first time, really talked about all the different ways people are using ChatGPT, the percentage of messages that are about things like coding, about information retrieval, personal lives, etc. And what you can see is that when, as a business, as an organisation, you might say, ChatGPT, I am a travel business, people are using that. They might be, but that's a percentage of all of the usage of that platform. So your penetration into that conversation, they might be using that for everything for, how do I make self-raising flour if I've only got plain flour, as well as where should I go on my summer holiday? And the point there is, those use cases are specific to the individual. What are they trying to do? And what is a good use? What is a good response? So people will use ChatGPT if it gives them what they want. They will use AI if it's giving them a better experience to achieve what they're trying to do. To give you an illustration of this, AI overviews in Google, so that's where at the top of the page it gives you more of a summary of a topic or something. This graph shows the penetration of the AI overviews in different industries at different lengths of query. So, if you are in 5, 6, 7, 8 length words in a query, that person probably is more research focused. They don't really know what they're looking for. They're not looking for, something as simple as, Volvo dealer in Cambridge. They are looking for something about, what's best for that research phase. So actually for a user, that is a better experience. That's what they want to do. And again, going back to the design parts, we try to get in the way of what is actually for a user, potentially a better experience. Beware of the biggest promises. In just the same way as that, the hype around AI was real, and there's a degree of sort of pushback and sort of fear, and to a degree fear mongering about AI. Beware when people are talking about marketing. It's suddenly all about GEO. It's all about generative optimization. It's all about AI SEO. It's not about this anymore. It's about that. The largest claims need the most amount of proof, and fundamentally, these are not claims that will stand the test of time. To give you an example, the Guardian article about SEO is dead. That was 12 years ago. The point being is, these are trends that everybody likes whenever something comes along to hop on that bandwagon, try and position themselves rather than thinking what is the underlying truth. And the underlying truth is that SEO, as an example, has been through many, many iterations, whether it was spam updates, whether it was Panda for content quality. There's been so many different things, but fundamentally, what's happened is that are we delivering the right experience for the user on a website that performs well, that means that they can get where they need to be and it's delivered in the shortest possible time? Or are we getting in their way with a bad user experience and trying these short-term spammy tactics? And that really makes a massive difference of just, don't go with that, this is a new shiny thing, and we'll just say that this is the next big thing. And one thing to put context around that is actually how big is ChatGPT's traffic? Luckily, Ahrefs have produced, ChatGPT versus Google.com. And here, what you can see is that across all of the web, the websites that deliver traffic to other websites, Google accounts for 45% of that. 45% of all traffic going around the web is transferred from Google to another website. ChatGPT, it's about 0.3%, relatively a rounding error. So should we care about what people are doing on ChatGPT? Absolutely. Should we care that we want to get more traffic from it? Well, possibly not. You can see there that, it is pence on the pound of sites like Bing. Do you, as a business, have a Bing strategy specific for the ranking things for Bing, or do you do the right things that Google and all the others like that will also account? ChatGPT is not delivering the traffic that DuckDuckGo is. Again, you don't have a specific strategy, you don't pivot. You think, what are the underlying truths and how do I achieve those and keep achieving them? Another thing, and again, these big claims, it's an exponential growth. It's small now, but it'll be massive later. Actually, the current numbers don't stack up. ChatGPT, etc., is obviously delivering a level of traffic, but in terms of month-on-month growth, it's not really increasing. 2 points there. One is they're not always delivering people from ChatGPT as a result to another site, so they could answer things within them. So it's an ecosystem that doesn't always get broken out of. And the other point being, are people using this? And going back to my point earlier about how people use ChatGPT, are people thinking, I like it for this, but I maybe don't like it for that? So again, the largest claims need the highest burden of proof. At the moment, some of those, absolutely, it is part of the thing to talk about, but it's changing behaviour rather than changing statistics. In terms of the next trend and the next thing I want to talk about is this everything everywhere all at once. As marketers, we've never been busier, having more channels and more things to worry about, more different creative formats, more things that work on TikTok don't work on Instagram. This is a really key thing that people are not always, embracing because it used to be so much more linear. And when it comes to, the marketing funnel that used to be very sequential, it was discovery, then, discovery, awareness, interest, conversion, etc. Pick your favorite funnel. There was a lot of them. It is still useful to think of people at different stages of where they might start. But what it is now very difficult / nearly impossible is to completely map that intent to, okay, people only do discovery here, they only do conversion there, they only get re-engaged here. Now, those touch points are messier. The activity that we need to run has to be consistent across our social as well as our content, as well as any brand activation, as well as any perhaps traditional media. You need that consistency. You need that message that goes out across all of those. And actually, all of the channels will play different parts of that journey. So you might be discovered on a Google search or in ChatGPT. You might have an activation that's on TikTok. It's not as linear as it is. And actually, what is also a truth is that that's really difficult to explain to a board or an organization or a sales team that is used to a very clear this money in equals that money out. It's very much a thing that people need to be looking at and going, how do I understand the whole? Because I just cannot know. And when you add in things like GDPR and privacy and cookies, it gets absolutely even more complicated. What I've also predicted, and I've said before, but it's starting to come true, is that for a period, OpenAI, Perplexity, etc., these were tools that you went, and at most their income were things such as subscriptions. The sheer amount of money that these require is never going to be able to be recouped through a subscription model. The only way it can get the scale of the next Google, the next Facebook or Meta, is through an advertising model. It has a user, it has the attention of that user, it has the network effect of keeping them on their site and the time of it. How can they monetize that? So recently, OpenAI are being overt. They're literally hiring into their ad infrastructure team because they will be going down that route. I'm positive that because somebody has to pay for all of this investment, advertising is going to be the way. So we've had a couple of years where an organization or a business hasn't necessarily had a route into what was, a ChatGPT chat. It's difficult to, I don't know what's happening in there. My user might be saying all sorts. How do I get part of that? In the next 12 months, I strongly believe that we will start seeing advertising products that will allow you to be part of that journey in just the same way as Google was when people were researching, and then they added links, and they've added shopping, and they've added YouTube, and they've added all these other ad opportunities. They are not just from an ad point of view, but that you will see more and more commercial features or features that can be monetized by the platform. Just recently, last week or so, ChatGPT launched effectively checkout within ChatGPT. So that would be connecting things like Shopify stores, Etsy to ChatGPT, and they can handle that process of checkout. So somebody could be looking, the example in their video is somebody looking for a housewarming gift. They then say, do you like this? Yes, I do. I'm just going to buy it. There is a portion of people in certain circumstances that this will work for, and I do not in any way think that it's a bad idea. But again, go back to that human nature, choice. We like walking into a supermarket and having a browse. We like walking into a shop and feeling the clothes as we walk around or holding them up, do they fit right? So one thing with all of these sort of agentic things, which is trying to shorten that period. If you need a box of matches, you need a box of matches. You don't really care. But when you start getting into more emotional sort of transactions or things that might be about your family or about your holidays, I still believe that underlying human nature will not mean that has an uptake in anywhere near, and they will say, okay, I've got my research, but I want to go off to learn more and find out more. You will see this sort of odd, in a way, convergence of all the different aspects of AI. So whether that is what used to be Siri over here or Alexa at home and the Echo in the kitchen, now, for instance, Google Gemini is coming to Google Home. So therefore, in just the same way as you can talk to it as an LLM, you'll be able to use that more as an assistant. Hopefully, it makes the Echo in the kitchen more than just a kitchen timer and playing K-pop Demon Hunters soundtrack for the 14th time in a day. It needs to be useful, and actually, this is that thing. What is going to be useful for people? And some of these tools are going to be able to be, really transformational in just how the adoption. Again, it will fragment everything everywhere all at once. This fragmentation, it's going to have a change in traffic. Recently, there was a comment, it was actually by Apple, saying that they're seeing fewer searches on their phones sort of year on year. This turned into a whole thing about, is Google search doomed and are they going under in just the same way as all the hyperbole I talked about earlier? This meant that actually Google put out a post that said, searches aren't down. Fundamentally, we're delivering, same amount of traffic to the open internet, the rest of the web. It's all good. It's nothing there. We don't believe that's strictly true. It's not certainly what most marketers see. And what we're seeing is what's being sort of dubbed the sort of the decoupling. And when I mean that, that means that when you look at your stats around Google and historically, the impressions that you got, so the number of searches that you appeared for within the results, used to have a relatively good correlation with the amount of traffic you got. Obviously, good SEO, you have higher rankings, you get a larger portion of that traffic, but more people search for Christmas decorations at Christmas, your traffic would go up in relation to it. The thing now, and since AI overviews and this, this summarization of content, is that people are not, they might have the impression, they might have the search on Google, but they're not necessarily coming off that to the site that that is being summarized from. And so in many of our clients, and it varies quite dramatically by industry, and going back to my previous slide that showed different industries have a different prevalence of overviews, that you will see a difference in traffic. And one thing there, which I'll talk about later, is that your KPIs, if they're based on impressions and traffic, they will look different, but for a similar outcome. It's easy to be cynical, and this is an example of is that, as I talked about, AIs summarize and don't necessarily deliver traffic, including to the Google blog post that said we still deliver all the traffic and people don't just stay on Google. So again, when you're looking at this, what is the behavior that they're really trying to address, and what do users want? So drawing to a close, what do you need to know, and what perhaps are some takeaways from this last half hour or so? First of all, is that separate a few concepts. AI isn't a monolithic thing, it doesn't have a monolithic impact. The first is that discovery has changed. How people research, that LLM model of having much more conversational search, it's actually better for the user quite often. It gives, especially if it's something they're not too sure about, they want to be able to ask what would otherwise be dumb questions. It is a part of their journey, and it's actually not bad that they're doing it on LLMs, because it's going to be something that it can deliver them that sort of questions. Do you want to learn more about this? I want to learn more about that, rather than having to go back and forth to lots of different Google searches. What that does, though, is it changes what they're searching for on Google. And typically what we're seeing is that those higher research questions aren't being done on Google as much, and certainly aren't coming off Google onto a website. And so when you do get visits from Google, they're fewer, great decoupling, but they're much higher intent. So your response and their conversion rate, etc., is that much better. Google searches showing AI mode and overview means that people are not clicking away from Google. Doesn't mean they're not searching, doesn't mean they don't want to know more, but these are different things that need different responses to them. So, to sum it all up, the 4 things I want to say for coming in the sort of future is that the news will be worse before it's better. Expect those incredibly strong headlines, potentially quite negative. They come from a point of truth, and there's something in them, just the same way that the positive was as well. But look beyond them. AI isn't going anywhere. It's not the next 3D TV that will just have its moment and die. It will come into something that will become part of things and be that much better. We have to embrace the long term, not necessarily think that it's going to be the best thing overnight. Your view of a metric needs to change, because things like the decoupling, things like the discovery happening on LLMs, what used to be the board report, you will get reports that show the traffic is down, but conversions are up, because our visibility is good, our people are discovering us in a multitude of different ways. And that whole thing of the matrix that is now discovery rather than a linear funnel is going to be absolutely key. So, as marketers and obviously agency partners, we need to help you and give you those talking points, but equally you need to have them with your board or your managers that say, right, we need to understand that what good looks like will be different. You will pay more money in terms of advertising, but predominantly for better quality users. That I pay for my users and I have a 3% conversion rate. You might double the amount you pay per user, but it's a 6% conversion rate. The net is similar, but the cost, because there are fewer people that are wanting to come off these, at that research phase, it's going to be more expensive. But that doesn't mean, because when they do it, you're not paying for all the people that are tire kickers that are just doing the research phase. Your costs will go up on a conversion basis, but because of this relationship, what we're seeing is that when they do go up, that comes up. That all that is just substituting volume for quality. And there's one thing here: it's focus on the human behind the device. It's not about whether they're on mobile. It's not about whether they're doing voice search. It's not about whether they're using an LLM. What is the human user that you're trying to connect with? What is the brand message that connects with them? What's the, what the channels they're on? Where do they live? What do they care about? That is what is going to make the future of marketing succeed, not short-term tactics. Thank you very much for joining me for this last briefing of the year. We'll be sending this through to everybody, and obviously be getting in touch and talking to you about the next one. Thank you.